Thank you so much. Sorry about the heat and humidity in here. That's Steve's fault. He's from Louisiana. Listen, we're 8 days out from the election, and we are continuing, the Republicans are continuing to draw the contrast between our agenda of liberty, opportunity, and security for everybody and the Democrats' destructive agenda and their radical left policies. You will see that on display on the House floor this week and in the weeks ahead. In the meantime, let me give you just a quick update on the second assassination attempt. The second assassination attempt. It sounds surreal to say so. As fate would have it, my wife Kelly and I were at Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump. We were supposed to meet earlier after the shooting attempt. We joined him immediately thereafter. We spent almost 3 hours with the president. I will just tell you, and you may have heard my personal reflection on this, he was completely unrattled by the experience. Donald Trump is a strong individual, and he's a strong leader. And I don't think anyone can argue the case that there's been anyone, and certainly in the modern political era, probably throughout our history, who's been so aggressively attacked, and yet he remains so resolute and so committed to keep fighting for the American people. And I was very inspired by that. And I know that we all understand we've got to get down to the bottom of this. The Secret Service has dropped the ball, and it's inexcusable. We have a task force that has been investigating the events of Butler, Pennsylvania. As our conference chair, Lee Stefanik, noted, we're going to expand the scope of the task force to look into the events that happened in Florida on Sunday as well. We have got to get down to the bottom of this. We've got to ensure that this doesn't happen again. If they need additional funding, Congress will supply that. But we're told it's a manpower problem. Even if we gave them $3 billion tomorrow, it's impossible to hire 2,500 new Secret Service agents in a short period of time. We are less than 50 days out from the election. We need Donald Trump to be protected, as any candidate of his stature would be. I called the White House yesterday. I made a demand of the White House, President Biden, supply for President Trump the same degree of protection that a sitting president has. He's a former president. I believe he's going to be the next president, and right now he's a candidate under the greatest threat of any candidate in modern political history. It justifies that level of protection. I think the White House, I hope the White House will see the wisdom in that, and I hope that they'll do everything they can, because the buck stops at the White House in the Oval Office, and President Biden has an obligation of that. Third, and finally, I don't want to reiterate what's been said so clearly and concisely here, but everybody needs to turn down the rhetoric. You just heard the selection of quotes, the threats that have been made by leading Democrats in this country. It is inexcusable and it is dangerous. It is leading people to be triggered. When members of Congress or the nominee for president of the Democratic Party says that President Trump must be eliminated, or that he's a threat to democracy, or they compare him to Hitler, there are people who are unstable, and it makes them do crazy things. This is common sense. Let's apply common sense. Let's have a vigorous debate on the policy differences, on the records, but let's turn the rhetoric down, because we're not going to be able to sustain that. Also this week, you heard from our dear colleagues here. The AP uncovered the latest example of election interference by the Democratic Party. Certain Democrats, the Patriot Run Project is what it's called. Everybody needs to look more deeply into this. Secret group connections to the Democratic political firms and liberal donors has been trying and been preying on independent candidates with disabilities or tragic life stories. You heard Congressman Nunn talk about the situation in his district. They're trying to register these people as third-party candidates and siphon votes away from Republicans in swing seats. This is dirty politics. It's unethical, it's immoral, it's illegal, and it must be stopped. No one should have to cheat to win an election. We want a free, fair, and safe election. We have to do everything within our power to make sure that happens. We know for a fact that this has impacted seats across the country. Our Republican incumbents like Marinette Miller Meeks in Iowa, Don Bacon in Nebraska, Ryan Zinke in Montana, Jen Kiggins in Virginia, who you heard from this morning, they've been the targets of this. And in Minnesota, too, we know that they have worked to boost Democrat Angie Craig. It's unacceptable. The American people ought to call it out. It's unethical. Play by the rules, Democrats. Play by the rules. We're going to win this fair and square, and we're going to make sure. There's another election interference effort the Republicans are fighting right now, and that is to make sure that non-citizens are not allowed to vote in the election. And that is why we're bringing the SAVE Act again to the floor today. We're attaching it to the continuing resolution. Why are we doing that? It's very simple. Congress has two very important assignments right now, immediately to be done. One is to make sure the government is funded, and the second is to make sure our elections are secure. I've been traveling the country nonstop. As of last weekend, I've done campaign events in 206 cities across 39 states, 40 states I think now. I lose count. Every single public setting, when we turn to audience questions in these big gatherings, The first or second question, almost without exception, in every city, every town, every place in the country is, what about the election? Can we count on it? Is it going to be free and fair and safe? We have to guarantee that. Congress has a role at the federal level to make sure federal elections are secure. It is against federal law for non-U.S. citizens to vote in U.S. elections. But we have no mechanism right now to ensure that in the states because they're not allowed to ask for proof of verification of citizenship when someone registers to vote. We've had a number of states already do audits. They found thousands of illegals already on the rolls. This is a serious problem because some of our elections are decided by razor-thin margins, and everyone in this room and the Hill Press Corps knows. Mariannette Miller-Meeks won her first race in 2020 by 6 votes. Her nickname around here is Six Pack because of that. We had members, John Duarte in California won by just over 200 votes his first time. If you have a small percentage of the millions and billions of illegals who came over the border in the last 4 years under border czar Kamala Harris's policies, they could throw an election, they could throw the majority of the House, it could affect a presidential race. It's very, very serious stuff, and that's why we're going to do the right thing. We're going to responsibly fund the government, and we're going to stop the non-citizens voting in elections. Last thing, this is Woke Week. On the floor this week, you're going to see a number of bills that expose the Democrats' woke agenda that's hurting our students and our banks and our country at large. House Democrats have consistently embraced the DEI, anti-energy, and anti-American nonsense, and the American people are fed up with it. So we want our banks to be fiduciaries, not social justice warriors. We want our schools to be places of education, not indoctrination. So we're going to be voting on bills to keep our banks, banks, and our schools, schools. And I think that's common sense. We'll also vote to deport illegal aliens who commit violence against women and children. These are monsters that have no place in America. And finally, we'll tell sanctuary cities that the federal government will not bail out their dangerous policies. With that, we'll take a couple questions.
Mr. Speaker.